In the realm where bikes and minds entwine, we embark on a quest, both profane and divine. Through circuits and soul, our journey takes form, digital alchemy in the data storm. Two types of magic, mushrooms and machines, have one thing in common, are not what they seem. Through digital forest and silicon dreams, we wander and wonder what all of it means. Yet, until we unlock the secrets of this great mystery, we shall write poems using ChatGPT. Thank you for tuning into my presentation. My name is Steven, and for the next 20 minutes, I'd like to invite you to join me on a vision quest to discover the future of psychedelic science. Yet, before we talk about the how of psychedelic science, I'd like to spend a moment to talk about the why, to make sure that everything I'm about to say is being considered in the appropriate context. So why do we need science? Why do we need psychedelic science? We do not need science in order to validate or justify people's experiences. And we also do not need it to stop criminalizing people for exercising their right to bodily, cognitive, or spiritual freedom. However, we do need science in order to help us create more accurate maps or models of our experience, of consciousness, and ultimately of the nature of reality. And we also do need science in order to discover or rediscover how to put our experiences into words. And especially this aspect, the way we narrate and translate what occurred to us during our psychedelic journeys, is the most fascinating to me. Yet, before we dive deeper into that, I would like to share with you some findings from a study I conducted within the bachelor thesis research at Maastricht University that I did. So we were working with ayahuasca retreat centers in the Netherlands, and we asked them a lot of things. Among them, however, how many participants attend their ceremonies on average, how many ceremonies they facilitate per year. And then based on those numbers, we were able to calculate how many participants are drinking ayahuasca on average per month within our sample. The number we got out of that was 543. So 543 people, we again have to view this in context. So this only pertains to our sample. This number only pertains to ayahuasca, which is still an illegal substance or brew in the Netherlands. It doesn't pertain to the truffles, which people can buy legally in the smart shops. It doesn't pertain to LSD or other research chemicals. And we're only talking about the Netherlands, which is, a very small part of our very big world. So one thing that we can conclude from all of this is that people are tripping, which is great. There's a great wealth of insights and learnings happening in the so-called underground. Yet, how much of that are we bringing above ground? What are we learning? Well, for my thesis research, I was interested in the integration of ayahuasca experiences. So I used sort of the standard practice of most psychological science, which entails bombarding people with a bunch of questionnaires. So I used the questionnaires to measure their psychedelic experience. I used the ego dissolution inventory, challenging experience questionnaire, and the mystical experience scale. I used questionnaires to look at their mental well-being. And then I also had a questionnaire to look at their experience of the integration of their journey. So how this worked is that I gave them all kinds of prompts that are contained within these questionnaires. So for example, the feeling that they experienced eternity or infinity. People then had to reflect on their experience through this lens and report back to me how much it applies to their own experience in numbers. So this person, for example, experienced a 4 type of infinity instead of a 3 or 5, whatever that means, we just put it into our statistical analysis program, and we were then, by doing that for all of our participants, able to see how our theories or how our hypotheses are holding up in light of what our data is telling us. So there's one of the biggest upsides to this mode of analysis is the sample size you can obtain and the resources you need for it. So basically, there isn't a lot of difference between having a sample of 100 or 200 or even 1,000 people when it comes to the resources you need to analyze the data. However, there are quite some limitations to this. So one of them being that we give people concepts that might be quite ambiguous, and people may understand very different things when they hear infinity or ego, for example. And we're not only giving them concepts, but we're also giving them language. So this was especially a topic in our study. Most of the participants were native Dutch speakers, and they were also talking at their retreats in the Dutch language. However, most of the questionnaires we had were only validated in English. So then you either have to sort of force people to express their experience in a language that is not intuitive to them, or you have to create unvalidated translations of the scales, which may also lead to problems when it comes to the understanding. And also, in general, this conversion bit from language to numbers is quite unintuitive to us, I'd say. So there's no other context apart from doing research where people get a prompt like, did you experience infinity? And then they have to answer with a number. So how can we address these limitations? Well, now that I'm studying transpersonal psychology, I'm learning more about qualitative research. So in qualitative research, for example, somebody might report that they found God in a tomato. We then look at their entire report and derive different codes from their responses. So basically concepts or ideas they mentioned. And then using the whole sum of these codes, researchers try to identify themes or patterns within the responses. And then those themes are translated into theories. So I'd argue that there's a trade-off taking place between the transparency of a research method and the, let's say, depth or wholeness of the theories that can be derived from it. So for example, with quantitative research, it is very transparent. So as long as you have the questionnaires that were used and the statistical formulas that were applied to those questionnaires, it is quite straightforward how researchers arrived at their conclusions from the data they had. However, as we already discussed, it might not really be capturing what is actually happening in people's experiences. A more holistic way of investigating is qualitative research. However, there might also be somewhat bias that can be introduced in the coding of the responses. Nevertheless, it is capturing a lot more than quantitative research. And then I would say the deepest way of, let's say, investigation is the intuition of experienced practitioners. So there I'm, for example, thinking about Stanislav Grof, the Czech psychiatrist who did LSD-assisted psychotherapy with more than 4,000 people. And based on his sort of intuition and pattern recognition process, he was able to derive theories about the realms or maps of the unconscious based on his work. However, we might have a hard time transparently validating or describing how he came from the data he had to his conclusions. So the question is, can we find or perhaps develop a method of investigation that is both transparent, but also appreciates the depth and wholeness of this phenomenon we're studying? And in order to do this, I think we may have to use magic. The word abracadabra is derived from Aramaic, and it means I will create as I speak. And as it so happens, we're now living in a time where creating through our word, creating as we speak, is becoming more and more prevalent and accessible to all of us. So, for example, if I say, I imagine a cute little robot wearing a wizard robe standing on a desk, I am able to manifest this vision through words within seconds. Yet, if we will be able to steward this power in a holistic way, or if we will be like Goethe's Sorcerer's Apprentice and not being able to contain the spirits we've summoned, remains yet to be seen. Yet, I'd argue that we can, especially in the field of science, already see how these new powers we have at our fingertips are not being used in an ethical or sustainable way. So, for example, here we have the example of a journal which charges almost $2,400 in publication fees, publishing an article which was very obviously a direct copy-paste of ChatGPT. And somehow both the authors of the article as well as the peer reviewers seemed so far detached from what they're doing, from their research, is that it didn't get noticed by anyone until it was already published. Yet, instead of trying to figure out how we can use AI to cheat within the crumbling academic institutions, I'd invite us to look at how we can use it to, facilitate progress in the field of science. So, for example, this study right here was published in 2019, so actually before the whole AI hype, so to say. The researchers looked at 15,000 trip reports from 165 psychoactive substances, and they were interested in finding out which psychoactive substance has the closest, let's say, experience report profile to near-death experiences. So they applied a technique called latent sentiment analysis, which basically looks at the contextual use of words and, through statistical computations, is able to infer hidden or latent meanings and topics that occur within the reports, very much like a human would in a conversation infer sort of the meaning of what a person is saying without them explicitly telling them what the meaning is, or this process of reading between the lines. This machine learning technique is trying to simulate that. And what they found is that ketamine seems to have the closest experiential profile to near-death experience reports, which is quite surprising, at least to me. So I would have assumed that perhaps DMT or 5-MeO DMT might have a closer similarity to near-death experiences. And this is also reflected in the development, in the ongoing research, where people focus on DMT, for example, to pharmacologically model the near-death experience. Yet, I think that it is especially these differences in perception that may drive us to become more clear about our ways of making inferences and our ways of investigating qualitative phenomena. Another often very time-consuming part of qualitative research is the coding of reports, in which researchers have to identify areas in the transcripts which are relevant to their research question. So, for example, in this study right here, they had several concepts that they were interested in, such as psychological insights, altered metaphysical beliefs, detrimental or beneficial outcomes. And they looked at 240 trip reports they got from Aerobit, then basically manually labeled this data according to those categories. And they were then able to conduct statistical computations based on the labels they gathered. So for a study like this, 240 reports is a very impressive number. And I'm sure it took the researchers a lot of effort to label that data, to label this amount of reports. However, I would also like to mention that this is the front page of one of the most popular qualitative research analysis softwares, where they openly advertise AI enhanced coding. So basically you can sort of type in your research question, and then the AI will go through your text and sort of automatically identify codes that might be interesting in the context of your question. And I think if these tools are used transparently, if they are embraced transparently, where researchers report how they're using them, and most importantly, if what the AI is doing is actually accurate and is actually what they would do themselves, then tools like this can be a great asset in being able to incorporate more perspectives into our research process. However, if it's not embraced transparently, then we will just have more papers coming to the journals with higher sample sizes and nobody really understanding why. Okay, so the studies I just discussed have one thing in common, and that is that they made use of trip reports from Aerobit, which is a rather convenient way to obtain trip reports. However, there is only so often you can analyze these reports, and more importantly, you can't ask questions to them. So you sort of have to work with what you get when you use these open databases, which is why I think it might be very reasonable to also explore how AI might assist us when it comes to the collection of qualitative data. And for that, I think generative AI is very promising. So what you may already be familiar with is chatbots, which you can ask questions and they give you answers. But what if we flip the script and we create chatbots that have a specific research question in mind, and then we sort of answer the questions that they give us? By doing that, we may be able to solve quite a few sort of limitations that were sort of defining the qualitative research field so far. One of them being the resource limitation in terms of the time that researchers have available, since these chatbots could be online 24 hours a day and basically people could talk to them whenever it is convenient to them. But even more importantly, this way of collecting data may open up a completely new door for being inclusive to languages other than English in qualitative research, since only a few researchers speak many languages fluently, being able to conduct interviews in Italian, German, and English and Dutch, for example. However, with sort of automating this process, we may be able to facilitate something like that. So, automation in research, is it good or is it bad? Well, I'd argue that it has already been part of research for a very long time, as you won't find many researchers who are calculating their regression models by hand. However, as I demonstrated, we're now at a point where the recent technological advancements may allow us to introduce elements of automation also in the qualitative research field. And furthermore, by being able to quantify qualitative data, the lines that used to separate these two modes of investigation may become increasingly blurry or even transcended. So in the end, automation in research is neither good or bad, but it is what we make of it. So now we're at the end of my talk, and you will soon be on your way. But before that, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this vision quest today. And if you liked what you heard and you liked what you saw, the place to connect won't be too far. Just open your nearest browser and join a powerful alliance by typing the words psychedelic.science. From there, we shall continue to explore with hearts and minds opened wide this strange place where all the truths and mysteries reside. I very much look forward to seeing you on the other side. Yet, until that day comes, I'll leave you with goodbye.